After giving birth behind bars, Tinen became active in the anti-shackling movement when she returned to society in 2012. The National Organization of Women awarded her its Susan B. Anthony Award for her work. She's a former David Rockefeller Fund Fellow and received a Human Services Associate degree, Phi Beta Kappa, from Borough of Manhattan Community College. She's now in her senior year at Hunter College, part of CUNY. College and Community Fellowship, an organization dedicated to helping formerly incarcerated women continue their education, has been instrumental in her career. I'd like to introduce Tinen to everybody. I put some water there too.
Thank you. Phyllis told me you came up with the question. That was deep. What would you preserve? I was actually thinking about it in terms of material things, actually, because if you are incarcerated and you have an apartment and all of your material belongings, well, what's going to happen to those? And when you get incarcerated, you may have a bail to deal with, and you think about, oh, what would I do with my car? Oh, even if I had someone to take care of it, oh, the car insurance just spirals out of control. So actually, I was incarcerated, and it took about 10 months to get the bail money together. And to be honest with you, I had no intention of returning. I knew I would have to finish the remainder of my time sooner or later. But so I got apprehended, and I was taken to Rikers Island, where I was informed that I was pregnant. I was actually about 10 weeks pregnant, and I was like, whoa, that was kind of mind-blowing. So not only did I have to worry about anything else, I was now saddled with the reality that I was pregnant. And fortunately, Bedford Hills has a nursery program. So I knew I was going to, if I decided to go through with the pregnancy, I would be able to be with my child. And I want to say that Bedford Hills is only one of about 3 facilities in the United States that actually lets women keep their children with them. You can keep your child for a maximum time of 18 months. Blake and I came home together when he was 7 months old. So prior to incarceration, I typed maybe 55 words, 60 words a minute. I had done accounts receivable work, admin assistance, that kind of thing. So your main objective is to find employment, but upon release, I was mandated to an outpatient program, which I had to go to 3 times a week, and I had to report to parole twice a week. And the deal with parole is you report, and then you report less as time goes on. Let's say every 3 months is the norm after you've done a few months of perfect attendance. So, and your curfew is 9 o'clock at night. So I was saddled with an outpatient program, which was for substance abuse, right? But in prison, I was mandated to a program, a everyday program, I guess 3 hours a day, and they had a little daycare in Bedford Hills. You would bring your baby to daycare, and so it was odd that I was forced to do this programming while in the facility, and then I was released to then do more programming. And I felt like it was a really negative kind of atmosphere, because everybody there is fresh out of prison and forced to go to this program. And you're not doing anything beneficial as far as learning how to type. Like, some people there didn't have computer skills, let's say, or anything. No resume work, nothing about how to look for employment or anything else. So I want to say I was very lucky to have family support, because there were so many people that would get locked up for like really minor things, such as jumping the turnstile. Like, if you have to report to parole, you have to report to parole. It doesn't matter if you don't have train fare. It doesn't matter if you don't have money for lunch. It doesn't matter. And when you're released, you're released with the clothes on your back, because they don't really let you have clothes. You're wearing your greens in prison. Maybe you can have some sweatpants or silly things like that, but you're not getting released with any work appropriate attire to look for a job. And I went to a place called Our Children in Queens, because I didn't want to go home to my family and have all the pressure. So I felt like the program wasn't really going to help me get to the next level, and I started calling places after a few months, trying to figure out what I was going to do for employment, because I hadn't been able to look for a job, because I can't say, oh, I'm available for 2 days a week because of my outpatient program, because I'm from prison. Oh yeah, and then I have to go to parole the other day. Yeah, so I'm available 1 day a week. No. And I started calling organizations, and I'd say, hi, out places for formerly incarcerated people. And I would say, oh, can you help me? I'm looking for work. Do you have any programs? And a lot of them would say no, they were only for men. And then I remember one of them asked me, well, yeah, maybe we could help you. Can you lift 75 pounds? And I was like, well, even if I could, I have no desire to. So, and then I had a few problems where my parole officer kept getting switched. Even though I was reporting like once a month, I would get a phone call. All right, hi, I'm your new parole officer, you have to come in. And then I would go in, and then the parole officer would say to me, okay, so I need to see you in 2 weeks. And I'd say, yeah, but I'm reporting once a month now. Oh, it doesn't matter, I need to get to know you. So come back next week for new photos. New photos? Okay, fine. And mind you, to go to parole, you just don't simply walk in and see your parole officer. I have been in the parole office in the past, so I've been off parole for a few years now, but I remember being in there for hours. And once you go in, you can't go out. And my son was in daycare, and one time I went there around 11 o'clock in the morning, and it was closing in on 5:30. And I was, my heart is like beating out of my chest, because I had to pick up my son from daycare. And when the parole officer opened the door and called somebody else's name. I intercepted and I said, please, can you please see me? I've got to pick up my son. And he was like, well, you should have thought about that and came here earlier. And I started filling up with tears. I was like, I've been here since 11 o'clock in the morning, and you are going to get me arrested again if I just abandon my son. And he didn't care. And then I pulled money out of my pocket, and I said to the guy, I said, please, I had like $6 or something. I was like, I'll give you $5 if I can take your turn. And then the parole officer actually let me be seen. And I was just like completely traumatized over that, because everything was set up to make me fail all across the board. And I finally got to the point where I went to a place called Fortune Society, and they had like a 2-week employment workshop. So for 2 weeks, because they want to make sure you go there every day, you're going there on time, you're dressed appropriately, and then they can merge you with employers that are willing to hire a formerly incarcerated person. Because that's the problem. Like, so many people say, oh, these people from prison, look at them, they're not doing anything. Well, I'm from prison, and when I came home, I was trying to get work, and they actually sent me on a job interview. So I go on the job interview. It was a data entry job, and I'm like, oh God, that is a piece of cake, because I could type blindfolded, fine. I go to the job interview, and it was funny because I say, I'm not going to a job interview, I'm just going to talk to the guy to see when I start. And that's exactly what happened. I got the job. And when I started working there, I was like Down syndrome with the mouse. It was like I could barely even navigate my way around the computer, because when I came home, my time was filled with outpatient nonsense and everything else, and there was no time to work on the computer. And when people mentioned sanity, I would hold on to my sanity. Well, when you're incarcerated, there's no way to hold on to your sanity if you have your infant son with you, because I was on the nursery at Bedford Hills. That was great. But prior to getting housed on the nursery, I was on a unit that had I didn't have access to water. The only access to water I had was tap water. And it was like hot, disgusting tap water. It was like in the middle of the summer. It was so hot. And when I think about it, it doesn't even seem real, because the buildings, they kind of have like a tin roof. And I remember when I came home and I started doing advocacy work, I even like double checked with people, like, was I imagining that? Was it really like that? Because, they have you go to a program, a little job assignment in the morning, then you go for a couple of hours for lunch, you're stuck on the unit. And it was like, when you're housed in different units that are more permanent, then you have more, like a cooler, and you have access to an ice machine, and you can keep like cold cuts fresh. You have to continually refresh the ice, but it's manageable. But I didn't have a cooler, and I was housed on this unit too long because I was pregnant, and they don't put you on the nursery till you're like 9th month, because I feel it's because they want you to get a ticket. They want something to happen to prevent you from getting housed in the nursery, because it's a lot of trouble for them to have women on the nursery. It was like, to put it into perspective, when I went on the nursery unit, there were 21 women housed on the nursery unit with their children. It was like they had a couple of floors on this building, but only one was occupied. Then when the superintendent at Bedford changed, right, the depot security, I think her name is Kaplan, well, she stopped allowing people in the nursery. So from 27, it went to 7, because all of the women that got released were not being replenished with more women because they were getting denied nursery access. So these children were going home, and if you didn't have someone to take the child, it would go to the system. I mean, I can't say where every child went, but when I was on the nursery, the officers were constantly saying rude things like, well, what are you in jail for? And I was always very honest. I was like, drug-related incidents. And then I remember the officers saying like really rude things. I can't believe you were doing drugs. I'm like, oh, and what kind of drugs were you doing? And I was like, really? Like, so it was constantly a reminder, like, oh my God, you're just the worst. I can't believe this. It's just like they're outwardly, you know, all their gestures and comments were very derogatory. But to make everything worse, they'd always say things. They would be like, oh, look at you bitches. My tax money is buying your diapers. And we always had to take the garbage out. And I remember these boxes, and these boxes would have names. And I said to somebody, I said, look at this. Look at these names on these boxes, right? Because we'd have to tie up the boxes to bring it to recycling. And I asked the nursery manager. I said, what are those names on all the diaper boxes? Oh, that's because the church donates all the diapers. So they weren't paying for my baby's diapers. You know, I mean, it was just so rude. And then it was like any little thing. I saw two girls get into an argument, and all of a sudden, the officer comes in and was like, everybody go to your room. And they immediately called someone, because they have caregivers and nursery workers, so they got a woman from another unit to come, and they separated the women from their baby, and that was it. They never saw the baby, they never got to say goodbye, and the baby was sent home. Somebody had to come from the family that second. It was like I was on eggshells. I was always in a state of panic, because any little thing could get my child taken. And there was one incident where, okay, so when you're in prison, you're allowed to get food packages, and the package limit is 35 pounds a month. So when you're pregnant and you have to go to a mess hall to eat, they're always rushing you to eat. And the food, I always say it's called a mess hall because the food is a mess. It's like I'd always try to figure out exactly what it was. I remember this one thing, it was called like Yoko Shabi or something, and there wasn't meat in there. It was like soy fake meat, and horrible sauce, very hard to eat, and you're being rushed. So maybe you have heartburn, maybe you're a little nauseous. You have to rush and eat this food. And you can't take any food with you. And the whole thing is they do pregnant women this favor. They actually give pregnant women a snack. And the snack they give pregnant women to take back to the unit, because I always describe my experience as pregnant and starving. They would give us a bologna sandwich. And in the real world, doctors tell pregnant women not to eat bologna. So now when you think of bologna, it's not the best cold cut available, but if you would see Bedford Hills bologna, it's not pink or nice, it's gray, it's white, it's off pink, there could be lavender shades in it. It's horrific. I mean, it's really bad. So the point I'm trying to make is that just these simple things like getting food. Okay, you can get a 35-pound package, but if you're, okay, I have a 35-pound package a month, this could be helpful because I can't really eat the mess hall food. Oh, maybe I can't eat in such a rush, but that's only 1 pound of food, one pound per day. So I actually had a friend put a package in another person's name. And unbeknownst to me, that is a big no-no. So when they noticed that the sender was the same, they like marked the food, and they came to the unit and they locked me in my room. They locked me in my room with my son, and it was like a major, major problem. So I was immediately confined, and I wasn't able to use the phone. And my mother came up to see me because she hadn't seen me in a couple of days, and heard from me. And then I'm escorted, and I couldn't leave the room, not to take a shower, not to do anything unless the officer wanted to give me permission. And I go to the visit, I'm escorted by 2 officers, my mother's having a heart attack, like, what is going on? And I was like, I don't know, but you might have to take the baby. They might call you and you have to take the baby. And then they would have put me in solitary confinement for this horrific offense of ordering some extra food in somebody else's name. And thank God it worked out where I was like a month with no commissary, no phone privileges, but thank God I was able to keep my son. And on the nursery, like I said, it went from 21 women to 7, were given chores to keep the nursery going. So that included mopping, buffing floors, and you can't go anywhere without your baby. So it was like, if you had to use the ladies' room, you have to put the baby in a stroller, wheel him down the hall, go to the ladies' room. If you have to take a shower, the baby's right outside in the ladies' room. And when you're buffing the floor, the baby is right there in the hallway in the stroller. And there's crumbs that come when you're buffing. And I'm like, oh no, this is just so horrific. I thought it was so odd. And the little, oh, forget it. You know, once you open this can of worms, I could go on for days. But, you know, it's just really strange the amount of chores that we were bogged down with, because it would take like 2 hours or more to get these things done because there weren't enough women to divide these things. So then I think I left off with the data entry job. Of course, I was promptly fired. So then I started working as a walking messenger. Then I got fired for being a walking messenger. A walking messenger is like one step above homelessness. Like you think, oh, these people in life, you think, oh, homeless people, then you probably think walking messenger. Like I was fired for being a walking messenger. And I advocate for people's rights, formerly incarcerated people's rights, but technically, to be serious, I'm not even a violent person, and I couldn't be a walking messenger. So long story short, I realized that I had no options unless I was going to, and of course I was doing my advocacy work all along with this whole journey. I was involved with the Women in Prison Project, and then thank God I did a Reconnect course that teaches advocacy and things like this, which enabled me to do an internship somewhere, and it was actually supposed to be a 6-week internship that lasted 6 months, then it got extended. Like, I really excelled in this work, and I realized that I was going to get nowhere in life without a degree. So there's an organization called CCF, it's called College Community Fellowship, and I'm also a part of PRI, which is connected with Fortune Society, and they call that like CCF is PRI's sister. There are 2 organizations which do the same thing, which support formerly incarcerated people to pursue their education, which I did. So and CCF is like here, they always entertain the children. So when I go to different events there, they have caregivers that entertain the kids if you're doing a workshop, but they help you explore areas which you might want to major in, help you apply for, what's it called, FAFSA and, Pell, right, Pell, TAP, and all of these different fundings that you can get. And I got my degree in human services, and now I'm a political science major, because if I did not do this, then, because at least then I have options with organizations that help formerly incarcerated people, but I cannot, and I know women that, one girl in particular, I was with her at Bedford, her child had eczema, and he needed Aveeno and all those extra little things, and she was stealing them from, Rite Aid or whatever, and she went back to prison because, you're desperate, and I always would think that, because your child's got a fever, he's teething, you need baby aspirin. And if you don't have the money for baby aspirin, what are you supposed to do? It's like really problematic. I'll never forget the day I was in Manhattan with my son, and I didn't have an extra diaper, and I was on my way home, and I was like, oh my God. And I literally asked like 4 people that had kids if they had an extra diaper, and everybody said no. And I just wanted to, I just wished that I turned into a pile of dust. I was shocked that nobody gave me a diaper, but it was like, if I wasn't on my way home, I was like, oh my God, I would really steal some diapers right now. This is insane. I wish I had those people. I wish I had them on tape, and I would put them on Facebook. Nobody gave me a diaper. It's like ridiculous. If you don't have family support, you have very hard. I probably wouldn't be here today, but that's what so I touched on some things, including the microphone, and I'll now give it to Phyllis. Okay, great.